Welcome to Channel AMEC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrating to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell on the side, so once we have all the updates and news, you'll be the first one of getting all the insight. Now, today's video, we will like to continue about the topic that knowing that the 408 pandemic event visa has been scrapped, but leaving a little bit of room for the existing 408 visa holders where they can extend it as long as they do it before February 2024. So that was the biggest news of the week. But it also gives us the direction and also a signal that the changes of the new skill migration and the employment sponsorship visa is soon to be implemented. Obviously, that we know that because it was written on the migration review report. So today we will not talking about the pandemic event visa, but this will actually be a key event that leads to what we expect the changes. But what's the changes? Now, well, obviously there has no advice or notification, no media release at this point of time. But what I'm going to do today is take you back to that bulky migration review report published in April. Well, I don't know anyone will actually have fully read it, or even have read it, you probably haven't really comprehended all the detail that had gone through. Oh, for myself, I can't digest that much information. But as the changes and policies and news and media release continue to roll over time, we can sort of see how that's moving towards. So today, this video, I would like to take you back there and have a look at some of the advice or recommended changes, should we say, and have a think about what is coming up and how we could precisely predict or estimate what will happen for the skill and employment sponsor visa. Okay, so before we do that, there has been a bill thrown into the department for the Australian departments, where the migration amendments are coming up for strengthening employee compliances. Now, obviously, this is a bulky document of the bill, which is the proposed legislations, the law, 63 pages, very boring. I'm not going to take you through all this, but what it does saying is basically they're enforcing the compliance regulatory requirement or policies where the to stop, or I don't think it can be stopped, but to limit the exploitation of the employer sponsorship visa. So as you can see, this is ongoing. What date is this one? Let's have a look at the date. There's no date. I think it's just yesterday or something. Anyway, was it at the top on the? Oh, here we go. It's August 2023, but no date. But anyway, we just received this a couple of days ago, so it's ongoing. And once this is implemented, what's next? The next will be the new policy and the regulation for skill migration. Well, perhaps that's gonna be the point test system and the employment sponsor visa. Now I'm gonna mix these two together in this video. Why? Because there is a mixture. Well, if you're a skilled migrant, obviously you need to go into the workforce. And if you're an employment sponsor visa, you are also the skilled migrant as well. So it doesn't really say, well, in the previous, the current, the old scheme, they kind of separate them a lot. But what's gonna happen is these two visas will be mixed together and perhaps mixed or with the global talent as well. So let's have a look at what has been written back in April about the migration review report, and at the end of this video I'll summarize what I see and what's going to happen. So what we have already experienced and seen on the news is the 408 pandemic event visa scrapped, employment compliances being implemented and soon to be implemented, obviously that required to be implemented. So the new skill migration policy and employment sponsor visa can be further implemented after the compliance has been done. So, okay, now I have screenshot those particular area that I wanted to share with you, because otherwise the bulky review report you will not probably just find on the documentation. So this box 13, I forgot which page it was. It basically tells the skill independent point test could benefit from more granularity. What does that mean? Well, that basically meant the points given, if you have followed my channel long enough, the points given shouldn't jump from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, and then 10 to 15. It should just go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in more granularity, that's basically what it meant. So if we foresee what we have, for instance, for the English language, the proficiency points, if you score IELTS 6, you get 0 points, right? But if you score IELTS 7, you get 10 points. So what's between 0 and 10? Now you can't measure it. So they wanted to put more granularity into this kind of scale, so you can more pinpoint the differences between different skill migrants. So that is exactly what it actually meant. And I'm pretty welcome on this one, because at this point in time, people score IELTS 6, 6.5, there's no differences. But obviously the person with 6.5 is better than 6. The person with 7.5 is better than 7. But at this point in time, if you score 7 and 7.5, it's the same. So there's no differences between, they cannot differentiate between, here we go, that's the word here, you cannot differentiate between candidates and target program towards those who offer greater long-term economic benefit. So again, we're looking at the age issue here at this point in time. What this table is demonstrating is, I don't know who actually designed this, where for the Australian point test, that the candidate who is between age 20 and 25 is scoring the same point with people, the applicant with age 35 to 40 and 45. So why would a younger person and an older person score the same points? It just doesn't make any sense. So they are comparing with the scoring scale. Let me just pull that up. Between Australia and Canada, where Canada has the maximum point started rate raised from about 20, and then slowly, gradually, when you reach 30, gradually, dropping down all the way onto 45. Whether or not there has been a debate that they will continue to have the open for the skill migrant for people over 45 until 55. I'm pretty welcome with that one. Obviously, if you're between age 45 and 55, the age point will be 0, but you probably will score better on the employment experiences there. So that's what it's telling us. Now, the next page that I want to show you is the other reform directions, where the point test of skill independent migration, it says the panel process propose the further work to undertake and understand which characteristics contribute most to migrant labor market success in order to inform the recalibration of the test. So we make the number of observations and inform this work. So there are 4 points here I wanted to share with you. Okay, so the first one is the overall current point test is not sufficient granular. That's exactly what we just talked about. It needs to be pinpoint with each points towards differences between, for example, IELTS 6 and IELTS 7. Okay, to effectively differentiate between applicant and give applicant a realistic sense of the likely success of the application. Okay, and that's box 13 is exactly what we just read about in box 13 right up there. Okay, and continue on. Let me just move that up a bit so you can read that. Further consideration should be given to emphasize the place on the spouse attributes. So the current system, what we are experiencing now is, if you're single, you score most, numbers, points. And if you get spouse, and they start to asking whether if you have a spouse, you score 0, but the spouse have the English proficiency of competent level, you get another 5 points. But then if your spouse also pass the skill assessment, you get another points there. So currently, a lot of applicants will say, "Oh, no, why not just submit it as a single? Never married." You actually score more than having a spouse, perhaps. So what this proposal is talking about, we should reconsider how the spouse will actually contribute to the economy as well. Because when you migrate, I think more than half of the migrants are coming as a family, a young family. So secondary migrant should make up 55% of the overall skill migration intake. Now, there is actually an example of this one. If you can go into, you can search within my channel, go into the Canberra matrix. It does have a detailed point tests on the spouse's skill sets. So that is actually very good. Whether or not the federal government will actually take those as a reflect to this proposal, perhaps. Okay, so they are really looking onto the secondary migrants, where they can actually take more points in there. And Australian benefit, most of both partners have attributes that will allow them to succeed in the labor market. And the third point, the current approach will provide more points to the long period of Australian work may be interacting. Here's the key things. Okay, let me move that up a little bit. Interacting with the temporary visa program encourage weaker applicant to remain in Australia for an extended period, contribute to a growing pool of permanent temporary migrants. So what does that mean? Now, let me explain a little bit more. This is exactly what I'm saying, that they are mixing the utilization of mixing employment sponsor and the traditional skill migration together. So they are telling us that if a person has a lesser points, perhaps from the federal government point of view, they can provide a temporary, probably, I'm not too sure, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, they could actually provide a temporary work visa on top of, I don't know, or if they're coming offshore, you don't get straight permanent residency. It will be something more like 491 visa. So it's a temporary, and you get visa, so you remain in Australia, continue to work and contribute to the economy. So then you move on into the permanent residency afterwards, or perhaps utilizing the employment sponsor visa in a way to actually extend it. But how they're gonna design the employment sponsor visa, we have talked about it a little bit previously. By this reform, they basically want to scrap the labor market testing, and also scrap the utilization of the occupation list. So it could actually move on that way, work a little bit more, and transfer back to this general skill migration in another way. And the fourth point here is the value of skill occupation lists of selecting migrants, and the quality of those lists is also relevant to point tests. This issue is discussed chapter 8 in context of examination, identifying labor needs and the employment sponsor visa. So what does that mean? Well, that probably it means it's going to give into a different type of occupation with different points requirements. So there will be certainly a general occupation list, and then will be a critical, perhaps what they're going to call it, or high skill occupation list, where they actually gain more points on those ones. The current system utilizing that kind of tactic is getting all these STEM, STEM, the graduates from master by research or PhD, but there is no further points if you perhaps you study the STEM occupation in Australia, but you did not go forward into research or PhD, then you probably don't get those points. But what it's taking us into is perhaps we should get more points for those one who actually in those kind of occupation, and that should really match towards what they have proposed in the global talent sector. So those technological sector all throughout bio, agri, high-tech, advanced manufacturing, space and defense, and those kind of occupations should really get more points. Now, last but not least, I wanted to take you to this one as well. This is the final thing that I want to discuss in this video. Another reform direction of high-skilled migrant. This is just for you to actually take a look on how they mixed. This is what I'm saying. How they mix skill migration, employment sponsorship, and the global talent all together, and how the new policy will form, we don't know. But this is the key. Now, this is the key point where the government of Australia will like to attract this kind of skilled migrants. So attracting someone who is perhaps could include recalibration of point tests, improving service delivery, and second, that changes considered the global talent, improve clarity, and third, create a non-sponsor. Let me move that up. You can see this is a really interesting one, because what the UK approach is, they are giving out people who actually graduate from the top 50 university a temporary visa, so they can go there and see, well, if you graduate from Cambridge, from for example University of Queensland or University of Melbourne, you not just getting 485 visa, but anyone graduated around the world within this top 50, you can get this visa, come to Australia and live and work. And if you adapt to the society and economy, and you prove yourself to be a high human capital migrants, and you got jobs and things like that, there's a pathway to permanent resident as well. So as you can see how this was not really discussed in my previous video, but after I read the entire report, I'd like to share with you. This is some of the new approaches perhaps will be implemented in the future. So let's summarize this. So we have recently seeing the abolishment and scrap of the 408 pandemic event visa, and leading to the implementation of the employment exploitation compliance law. So what we expect, as we are already in September already, the new announcement of the skill migration point test, which will have more points towards all type of different attributes, and having introduced to the partners attribute as well, and the mixture of the skill migration and employment sponsor visa and the global talent visa, how the three will actually work best to actually produce the best outcome for the migration program of 2023 and 24 and onwards. Anyway, should you have more question, query, more than welcome to leave comment right down below, and I see you next video. Goodbye.